Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Imaginal talk series on learning and skill development this evening. There are some more participants still joining in. Hence, we will wait for 5 more minutes and we'll start the session very soon. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to YT Systems and Research. I'm Nidhi, Senior Associate and your host for the talk. After the successful 11 months of running Imaginal talk series on learning and skills development, to initiate the conversation, we have three distinguished personalities. Dr. Mona N. Shah, founder and director, YT Systems and Research, and author of Millennials Poised to Lead, a bestseller book on Amazon. In conversation with Irial O'Farrell, Principal Consultant, Change Manager, and author of Evolution Consulting, Ireland, and Lakshmi Priya Gopal, Project Manager, Railway Onboard Signalling Systems, ETCS at Alstom Engineering. I'm sure this evening will not only be an interesting one, but also packed with many takeaways. Without further delay, let's proceed to hear today's guest on Imaginal Talk. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute. Ma'am, you are on mute.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Thank you, Nidhi. Hearty welcome to all those who have joined our 12th live episode this evening. I'm so happy to have two ladies from two different generations who have dedicated their professional careers to the pursuit of project management. Thank you, Irial O'Farrell and Lakshmi Gopal, for joining us today and agreeing to share your own experiences on this show.
Thank you very much for inviting us, Mona.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
I'm very excited to be part of this show.
Yeah,
See
welcome,
that.
Lakshmi.
Yeah,
Yes, and I'm excited to see you after all these years. So, while I
definitely.
know Lakshmi Gopal perhaps a little longer than I know Irial, I see so much likeness in the way they think, act, and pursue project management. So, I think they have a single mindedness of purpose to operate in this domain and make the difference. Therefore, I thought of bringing them together in a conversation that revolved around women, projects, and the future of women in projects. Perhaps we may all have heard Sheryl Sandberg's famous lines, which go something like this: I want every little girl who's told she is bossy to be told instead that she has leadership skills. Irial O'Farrell is in the business of doing just that. Iriel has a graduation in applied sciences, physics, and math from Trinity College, followed by diplomas in statistics, financial services, and in design and facilitation. To add to this, she has several prestigious accreditations, such as in change management, emotional intelligence, organizational design, and Prince 2 in her bag of qualifications. In her career, spanning over 2.5 decades, she has worked in Australia and USA before moving to Dublin in Ireland. In 2006, she formed her own company, Evolution Consulting, which serves clients and culture change. Which serves clients in the areas of organizational change and development, global leadership, and culture change in domains ranging from engineering to pharma. Her clients include FTE 100 plus companies. As though her consulting work was not enough to occupy her, she has found the time to author 3 books in project management while raising 3 children of various ages. As a fellow author, I would say she nurtures 6 babies in totality. Lakshmi Priya is a civil engineer from one of India's prestigious institutions, namely the NIT Calicut and NICMAR Pune. She is also a certified project management professional from PMI USA. Lakshmi has a little over a decade of work experience in India with leading consultant and client organizations in the project space. In Sweden, where Lakshmi moved in the year 2016 with ABB Limited, she switched to Bombardier thereafter, and Bombardier has recently merged with Alstom. Here she works as a project manager. She also has her hands full with 2 children, both under 10 years of age. Lakshmi, as I know her, is sincere and precision driven. She has been a merit scholar throughout her academic life and received accolades at work too for her contribution. So, welcome Irial and Lakshmi on this show. Before we proceed with questions, let me introduce you to the idea behind Imaginal series. It is conceived to offer very personal perspectives about the role learning has played in the lives of our guests. When I see firsthand, the whole idea of learning is undergoing a radical change. There is so much that is thought, spoken, written, experienced, questioned, and planned in policies that it has left the whole world in a conundrum about its relevance or its utility. This talk series is dedicated to deconstructing and understanding this very change. Many ask me about why we've named the talk Imaginal. What is Imaginal? Well, Imaginal is the last stage after which the caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. We also know it as the pupa stage. The entire metamorphosis of the butterfly is an almost magical process, rarely found elsewhere in the world of living species. For one, the different forms in the metamorphosis are distinct from one another, so distinct that while in a particular stage, it would be difficult to imagine how the next form would appear for those who see it from the outside. And do you know, this stage-wise development is completely lost on the butterfly too. It does not remember how it looked when it was a caterpillar, and neither does the caterpillar know how it would look in future when it becomes a butterfly. Miraculous, isn't it? Over 3 decades now, I frequently came across the lines being repeated from learners. We never really learn anything while in school. It's only when we experience the hard knock of reality that we really learn. Much like the caterpillar, which has no clue what it will become in the future, most of us go through learning not knowing how exactly it had been designed to help us grow into useful and beautiful individuals in society. Interestingly, though, this view on learning, held by multitudes, has always been in contradiction to another reality. This reality being that the desire to enroll in good colleges and acquire degrees is equally appealing. And at another level, we are all aware that there's no better comparative advantage for any country when it comes to highly skilled human resource. Why educate oneself if it lacks clarity, or is either forgotten, or is seen as irrelevant at a later date? Why does formal education continue to command more premium? Instead of only relying on academic degrees, can continuous competency and skilling be the way forward? So today I shall ask my guests and viewers why these contradictions. And when we add gender to it, we have to explore further and find out whether these contradictions exist when it comes to gender. In the Imaginal Talk series, we present to you a number of guests from diverse backgrounds who will express their ideas on learning with anecdotes from their personal journeys. They will share how learning helped, or for that matter, did not help in their own growth and development. So, very candid is what I expect this to be. We also urge you to post your reactions and comments and engage with our guests for this evening. Irial O'Farrell, Principal Consultant, Evolution Consulting, Ireland, and Lakshmi Gopal, Railway Onboarding Signalling Systems, ETS. So let me begin with my first question to both of you. Could you describe a key learning from your childhood, school days, or an informal situation that has stayed with you? So can I request Irial to go first, please?
Yes. A very interesting question in the context of formal learning and life learning. In my own experience, I think not so much a specific instance, but more what I suppose as I look back at my childhood and around learning, what definitely comes to me is I loved reading books. You won't be surprised at that, but I loved reading books. And I used to go down to the library with my dad and spend kind of an hour or so down there just reading through the books, perusing the books and that. And I think one of the things that I came across a book series that was for children, but around history, around explaining kind of particular topics in history. And I think that's always stuck with me around context. And as an adult, and I look back, I'm always looking at what is the context of this and where did it come from and why have we ended up at this point? And I suppose the learnings from history, the learnings of what, things change, but also things stay the same, and the same mistakes get made, and what can we learn from that? So that for me is, I think, something that has always stuck with me from my childhood.
Wow, that's interesting. And coming from somebody who has, a background from STEM, which of course I will be mentioning, loving history is something that comes across as something very unique. So, Irial, I've noted that. Yes. And can we have Lakshmi now, please?
Sure. I'd like to start by saying that I come from a very humble background, from a traditional Indian family from Bangalore. My parents, like Mona ma'am said, that they very early on aspired that their children got the very best of education from the very best school in the city, even though it was private and expensive. So myself and my sibling, we got the opportunity to study in a school very well known for its academic excellence. So today, when I look back at my days at the school, which was so very well known for its academic excellence, what has stayed back with my memories is the very fact that my teachers, as well as my parents, they were very closely involved with me at a very early age on a daily basis. They would be encouraging me for everything that I do, not only for doing well in my academics, but they were also there to share with me my daily experiences, what happened at school, my interests, and whatever light moments were there at school. And I think this close connection, it provided me a lot of sense of encouragement to do best in what I do. It gave me a sense to build my confidence as a child. And I also think that this close involvement from parents and mentors, it ensures that children, they imbibe the right values from a very young age, and it shapes how they become when they are grown up and they are adults. So today as a parent, I also aspire to be the same support and source of encouragement and motivation for my children. So I think this is what I remember when I look back at my days, and I cherish those days. Yeah.
Very good, Lakshmi.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Thanks, Irial.
Yeah.
We go to the next question, which is, of course, related to higher education. After school, we move into college, and we find that there is a prescribed curriculum, perhaps at graduation or even post-graduation. And do you think that you have been able to correlate most of what you learned in that curriculum with what you are actually doing now in your professional life, or over your span of your career in your professional life? So, Irial, you'll go first again.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, I think in terms of my initial start into career was somewhat relevant to the maths. So as Mona said, I have a degree in applied sciences in physics and maths. And after that, I did a postgraduate in statistics specifically. And then I wanted to go and travel the world. So I went to Australia and just, was looking for a temporary job. And my maths got me an entry into financial services. So I worked for about 7 months in Sydney, working in financial services. And when I went to Boston, I moved to Boston then, and I felt I should do something with my degree. So I ended up getting a job in an actuary department in an insurance company, which was pulling on the statistics. I would have done a lot of actuary. And for me, unfortunately, about 2 or 3 months after I started in the company, the parent company decided to sell the company I worked for. And when the actuary department of an insurance company is sort of the brains of it, if you like, and so undergoing a sale meant that the actuary part was kind of closed down a bit, and I specifically worked in the forecasting department team. Oh. So we were forecasting nothing. So my initial experience was that I was using the actuary in terms of that particular role. But because I was sitting really for 40 hours a week doing very little because they didn't reassign us because of the sale. So I found myself going back into financial services. So I suppose directly for me, my degree didn't necessarily end up, equipping me specifically for the career that I ended up having. But that said, I think for me, when I went into financial services, then because I had the maths, the numbers meant something to me in the way that the numbers didn't mean something to other people. So to me, it wasn't just, 520. It was like, that means something. There's a meaning behind that in the system that we're working within. And I suppose that is where I would say that my degree has stood me, that the STEM has stood me in terms of my career. And I think also, obviously, my interest in the human came out, and the interest in the system in which we work. So I do org design, and I'm always curious about the system, which is very much coming from the STEM world. And so, where's the knock-on impacts from it? So for me, I think that's what I've taken from the science into the world that I ended up, into my career, into what I ended up working in. So that's, and that, I suppose, my fascination and understanding people is very much driven in understanding the system of the human. So it pivoted slightly into the human, but very much from a very logical, very systematic approach.
Yes, I have seen that, because when I read a couple of your books, that came through very, very, I liked what you had written. It was very precise, it was very accurate, and it was very trite in its treatment. So I understand where that comes from. Thank you so much, Irial. How about you, Lakshmi?
With me, I started my engineering with civil engineering. And then I did my post-graduation, as you know, in advanced construction management. But the first job role that I took, it was not directly related to the civil engineering that I did. It was more related to the contracts management that I studied at NICMAR. And I was quite interested in the role because I was very keen in learning how to negotiate contracts, and I was very much into details of how these contracts were formulated, and it really interested me. But then there was a point when I had to, for personal reasons, change cities, because I was working in Mumbai then, and I had to move to Bangalore, and I did not at that point get an opportunity of similar job role as I did as I was pursuing earlier. At Mumbai. So then I decided to step into the field of project management. And here again, this was only because I had a wide spectrum of areas to choose from what I wanted to do. And this stems from my education, that there were so many subjects that I studied. So nothing was really very new. Like I could dare to put my feet into any new field and try to do my best there. So I started with project management as a project coordinator. Of course, I did not apply all that I learned in my engineering and post-graduation all at once at the same time. But as I progressed in my career, I think at different steps of my job career, I have utilized different parts of the education that I have gathered during my engineering and post-graduation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. So now, but then I would have to ask you both that, would you be able to map the distinct competencies? Because now both of you have so many years behind you. And because when we work in projects, women in projects, basically, it's always, we are kind of, at least Irial, I can share with you, in Asia, there aren't too many project managers in the engineering field. So this question is of great relevance, and you can both then be able to shed light on the fact whether you all require distinct competencies as vis-a-vis the male counterparts, and you find them, whether you find them difficult to emulate, because we are made in a certain way, and we generally either consciously or unconsciously do we end up emulating our male counterparts in these kind of industries. So can we start with Lakshmi this time, because you have worked in engineering domains, so you can start by telling us what you think of the
Sure.
competencies that you bring to the table, which you have vis-a-vis the male.
Yeah, sure. So my opinion, I think, is that competencies are more individual based. Rather, I would not say that they are entirely gender based. But I do agree that I have that women have some traits that I have commonly observed more in women leaders and project managers than men. I think one of them is the fact that women, I think, communicate better with the team. I would say not just in formal meetings, but also informally with the team members. And I think this trait, it really helps for a project manager or leader to understand concerns and problems that the team might have at an early stage, which eventually might become bigger if not addressed on time. And I also think that women project managers, they are more compassionate because, of course, the higher emotional quotient, they handle situations and conflicts more amicably. I think this helps to create a better work environment and to also keep the team motivated. And last but not the least, I would also say that women are more detail-oriented, I think, than male counterparts. And this really helps in having a good quality of results. Yeah, that's all from me.
Yeah.
You see, I should have gone first. I think, I suppose, and as Lakshmi said, there, any individual may or may not fall into the sort of what generally happens for males or females, but females do tend to be more people focused, while males tend to be more object focused, task focused and object focused. And so I would agree that women often, one of the strengths that they bring is empathy. So in emotional intelligence terms, empathy is that ability to put oneself in other people's shoes and to see the world from their perspective, not necessarily agree with them, but to see where they might be coming from. And I think women tend to have higher levels of empathy in general. They tend to have higher levels of empathy than men. And in project management terms, it means that one is more attuned to where somebody might be struggling, or somebody might be having, because a lot of times people on projects, they're working on the projects, but they may also be working in on their own business as usual job, their day job, so to speak. And I suppose the types of projects I work on, it's not necessarily the people aren't, they're doing their day job and then they're trying to do this project work as well. So understanding where they might be coming from. And the other thing that I think women are good at, they generally tend to be more agreeable. So they're more likely to work with people, to collaborate and to find ways and solutions to issues and challenges, and to get input from other people rather than saying, this is what we're doing. Yes. And the more people are involved in the solutions, in understanding and exploring the challenges and coming up with solutions, the more they take ownership of implementing those solutions. And so therefore they're more likely, the project is more likely to keep on track and to, if they overcome whatever the challenges that inevitably come up on a project, of whatever type of project it is.
Right. Yes, and I think with all your consulting work, you see this, we see this, coming up not just in reality, but through research also. We know that this kind of empathy, this kind of agreeableness, this collaboration is quite distinct when it comes to women. So thank you for that. And now both of you will have to tell me, I have been an evangelist in for project management for quite a few years now, and but have been more in the area of STEM, where I have taught students with a technical background. Now, both of you here have pursued STEM. So my question comes, actually comes from the fact that is it only STEM that leads the project management skills domain, or should it be, is it an advantage in navigating project management? And if suppose the natural corollary to that is, if I was a non-STEM, I have a non-STEM educational background with no clear learned skills in PM, can I succeed in hardcore PM roles? Because literally, I am not from a project management background myself. I am not a technical person. I am from the humanities and social sciences. But, and I've always had this dilemma, and I'm putting it forth to both of you who have been from STEM, whether PM skills can be actually taken to a more wider audience and made into a proper skill training, and how to navigate through this project management, non-STEM background in order to succeed in project management. So please, both of you can now tell us about that. Lakshmi, would you like to go first again this time?
Sure. Since I'm from an engineering background and also from the fact that I've also worked more in engineering related projects, my STEM background definitely has helped me a lot. I think I understand technical issues better, and that helps me to go to the root cause of problems and to help the team to solve the problems better. So I think sound technical knowledge is definitely a strength because it helps the project manager to identify the risks earlier on in the project. And of course, to create risk mitigation solutions and so on. At the same time, I think I have seen a lot of people from non-STEM background as well who are excellent project managers who have been in the industry for many years and who do much better also, we can say, than those who have a STEM background and who are project managers. So here again, I think it depends on an individual case, but I would like to say that the value of the knowledge that is built through experience is equally valuable to that of education. So I think it's the right mix which is required to become an excellent project manager. So there could be somebody who has very good skills and very competent with certain skills, but for him to become a project manager may be a harder career path to learn through practical experience more than a STEM person who could maybe beforehand understand what issues could come up and he could solve them. So I think it's about striking a right balance between both, but it's opportunities available. Project management is more a wider job role, and it can be open to both STEM and non-STEM people with both backgrounds. Okay. I don't know if I answered your question. I was somewhere cat on the wall, but still.
I think you have. It's for the audience to decide, actually. Okay. And Irial?
So it's, in terms of this question, I think, I suppose it depends on the complexity of the technical complexity of the projects. But I think, I think one not coming from a STEM background doesn't mean one has the potential to build out the skills of project management. And what I would say is, and this would be valid for any project manager, whether they're coming from STEM or not, is in looking at the competencies or what makes a good project manager. Somebody who has a natural tendency to plan things out and to be organized and stay on top of things is very helpful, and that doesn't just happen in STEM. And I would say the ability to understand the knock-on impacts of dependencies and the time frame, having that sort of level of detail of the project plan to understand the dependencies, and also the ability to anticipate. So again, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's particularly a STEM competency. Anybody from any industry can anticipate, but that ability to look ahead and go, what's coming on down the line, which is why planning is so important, and by understanding the plan and the dependencies within it are very important. Obviously, the more technical a project is, if it's an IT project or an engineering project, having that understanding of it can be very useful and important. But also it can be a disadvantage because the project manager might enjoy getting into the nitty-gritty of the technical part of it, which isn't really their role either. So again, it can go both ways.
True. So I think what I can gather from this is that I think these are skills that can go, that are sector agnostic. We can carry them into every industry, so to say, as also that there is a role for non-technical people within a highly technical background. So that's what I can get from what the two of you are saying. And that takes me into the next question, which is related to the technical. It has been partially answered by you. So I would like you to now only focus on which are those special technical and non-technical skills and competencies which are needed for professionals in your respective fields to take up senior roles in project management, consulting, and engineering management organizations. There has to be something else, because when we see a Satya Nadella, for instance, becoming one of the most sought after CEOs in the whole world, we are talking of somebody who hardly speaks anything technical anymore, but is known for his people skills. So, and you have said that, Irial, in the earlier session, in the earlier answer too, that there are so many things that you move into. You don't have to get into nitty-gritty. But how does that work out? Because if I don't know what the nitty-gritty is, that might come back to haunt me sometime later. So how much do we need those non-technical as well as technical skills to navigate? Irial, please.
Yeah. Yeah, this is such a great question because the more senior we go, and I suppose I'm in interpreting this question, I'm talking about moving beyond the project manager into a senior project manager, where you might have project managers reporting into you. You might be moving into executive leadership roles within the organization. And then it becomes beyond the running of a project, and it moves into running numerous projects, but also the relationship with the customer, with the client. It also gets into the running of the business, which is a very different thing to running a project. And so for me, it's that mindset shift that needs to happen to recognize actually my value here to the organization isn't around my ability to run a project. It's to be able to oversee numerous projects while ensuring the client is happy, while I'm also developing additional new business down the road for the client, particularly in consulting organizations. And those skills are very, very different. So it's really around letting go. So one of the skills is, how do I coach my people, to my project managers, to be able to deal with the running of their projects while keeping sufficiently close to, and trust is a huge thing here, while maintaining that trust that the project manager will come to me and explain to me if there's something going wrong or they have a concern, so that I'm not getting blindsided. And that comes down to having very good relationships, and that the project managers feel that they can bring an issue and it's not going to they're not going to feel that they're in trouble. So that in itself is a huge mindset shift, and very, very different skill sets. Again, a good project manager should have that coaching approach anyway, but maybe not everybody does. And then it's around the organization, understanding the running of the organization, which again is a very, very different mindset and different skill sets. And then when you're into business development and the relationship, it's the quality of the higher level of the relationship rather than the day-to-day running of a project relationship, which is a much more strategic relationship, moving into where are you, what are you doing, what's coming down the line for you, how can we help you? So you're having those kinds of conversations. So again, that leadership piece coming in around the longer term vision rather than just the immediateness of the project. So that there's a lot in that, but that to me is a big step up, and that's important for organizations, that they're starting to think about that for their project managers. They're starting to kind of build out those skill sets and mindset shift during their development, so that they have a pipeline of people that can move into that space.
That's right. Yeah, and I can understand exactly where you're coming from, because when we also look at, when we are coaching those from middle to senior level, they're so caught up with what they are doing in the present that they are unable to even conceive the fact that they can move to a level of a CEO, and they would need to shed a few things, a few of their competencies in order to adopt and do better at some others, such as you put them leadership and giving up some, the micromanaging for something, for the larger picture. I can very well understand that. But now we'll need to know from Lakshmi, who's actually in the thick of things when it comes to management, unlike Irial, who gets people to move to the higher level. How do you see yourself navigating this, your time in actual projects, and also thinking of what you would be able to do sometime in the future in your profession?
Sure. I have already got like a small taste of it for a period of, I think, 2 years, where I was a team lead for, I think, about 12 to 14 people who are not project managers, but more planners and project management officers, who are like support functions to the PMs. And my role was to streamline the processes for project management. And this, I think this is like a miniature version of taking a senior project management role, where project managers are reporting into you. So I do see a lot of challenges. Of course, I think the key technical skills required by a senior project management or a consultant role is for them to have a firm grip of and firmly believe in the project management concepts, as well as to have like good enough knowledge, working hands-on experience of complex projects, so that they are able to really sell the value of implementing these project management concepts and project management good ways of working in the project, because sometimes people can be stuck by the ways of working in what they do. They think that is the best. It is very difficult for people to adapt to change. And sometimes the managerial jargons and the methodologies which we try to implement in the organizations, we see a lot of resistance from the team, because to them, they see it as no value add. So I think the real challenge to a senior project management consulting role is to sell the value, that value add that will come with the changes and streamlining of the project management processes. So I think it's this is the key technical skill that I would say a senior PM requires, apart from what Irial said, the leadership skills, the team building skills, and to help the team to really solve problems. So of course, like a senior person can overall monitor a portfolio and do a portfolio planning and report to the higher management. But however, I think what is more important is to really be there for the team, to see the bigger picture, to see commonalities between projects, what are the recurring problems, similar problems between projects, and to enable the lessons learned and knowledge sharing between different project management persons and functions in the organization. So everybody works together as one big team in the organization. So I think this is what I see as a senior.
This is very interesting because we get both the perspectives now over here. Mm-hmm. So while you're in the project, you're already being groomed for a higher, higher level of work. And I think you are seeing the importance of the human along with the importance of your technical skills that are helping you to get into the next level. So, but now I will have to focus on something which is very different. From your individual, I will want you to, throw light on something which is very, something which I'm closely addressing and researching about, which is the generations at the workplace. Now, we have something like 5 generations that exist in large organizations, like the ones you have worked, the FT 100 plus, as well as where you are currently, Lakshmi. So how do companies navigate through all this? Because there are different ways of doing things, different cultures, and it's so global now with different ethnic backgrounds also inside of one organization. So how do you manage? Is it always better that a woman is at the top? What would you think? I mean, do you think that would help in taking all people along with them, or do you think it is neutral, it is gender neutral? So please tell me how it works for both of you. Irial?
Yeah, it's interesting in terms of when with the millennial generation came in. I do remember when the Gen X, I do remember when that generation was coming into the workplace. I was in the States at the time, and there was an awful lot of talk about it, and how that the Generation X was going to mingle into and work with the boomers and the silent generation. And then since then we've had the millennials and then the Gen Z coming through. And when the millennials came through, it was hugely, again, there was an awful lot of talk around the millennials and how different the millennials were. And I know I'm talking to the expert here in terms of the millennials with yourself, Mila. But I would say there's, in some ways, it's slightly less. I think that the difference with the millennials was so great that the Gen Z doesn't seem to be making as much noise. I'm not hearing quite as much from clients in terms of the Gen Z. But I suppose they're really only starting to come into the workplace. I think, in some ways, I think it's really interesting because I also think the workplace, the work of an awful lot of industries has become an awful lot more complex. Because of technology, we've taken away an awful lot of the sort of very I suppose, mundane tasks that might have traditionally been associated with an industry or with a profession. And so the work that people are doing is an awful lot more complex than it ever was before. So I think it's quite an interesting combination. So it's both. Now there's an awful lot of industries that are in the knowledge industry, that, you know, it's all about the knowledge in people's heads. So there's a combination of how do you develop and how do you bring in new generations, while also getting out of people's heads what's in their heads and sharing that knowledge to enable them to do their jobs. And I think that's a very interesting juxtaposition that I'm not sure an awful lot of industries and an awful lot of organizations have really come to terms with. And I think there's a lot of confusion around what is a job, what's in a job, and what's the outputs of a job, because a lot of the outputs are no longer tangible outputs. And so I've actually worked with several organizations where we've put in place frameworks to articulate what some of those expectations are. And they're finding, and they're in, you know, technology. So you get in technology and tech, you get a lot of, again, that knowledge working and a lot of confusion as to how clear it is. So I think organizations are going to have to need to move much more towards articulating those frameworks of what the expectations are at different levels within organizations, and that will help them merge in the different generations. Because at this point, I think there's a lot of different expectations from different generations, and that's causing an awful lot of noise in organizations. So yes. I could probably talk about this for hours, but I'll leave it there for the moment.
Yeah, let's have a Zoom on that sometime, because I see the same thing too, that so many organizations they have the generations, but they don't have a plan around them, you know, as to how they are going to affect the change. Lakshmi?
Yeah, sure. I'm not really an expert with this, but I can say from the point of view of the organization where I work in, where I see a lot of initiatives being taken to embrace 5 different generations, probably working with them. There's a lot of importance, like what Irial mentioned, on retaining and transferring knowledge between generations. And there's a lot of impetus to, for these management development programs and internship opportunities for fresh graduates who come from good universities, that brings in a lot of young minds into the organization, fresh talent. And there are mentor programs and like buddy systems in the organization to ensure that there's a good transfer of knowledge from like senior experts to new joinees who come into a department or with teams. That way there is knowledge transfer. And also there are formal training programs conducted by like this, we call like the senior engineers or the senior technical experts. I have not seen it so much in the managerial field, but more in technical, that there are training programs being conducted to share knowledge and have discussions, open discussions on topics between generations. And also I see that communication styles have changed. It's not just on emails or formal communications. There are a lot of technology advancements on fast messaging forums and of course, Teams platforms, it's helped a lot to get people networked from different geographical locations to work together and so on. So there's more easy access to people than what it was before even in big organizations. Okay. And I also know that one of the biggest initiatives in HR in our company is to focus on a 5-year plan for succession planning to closely monitor the number of people who are retiring and to plan the capacity and the knowledge transfer and successors to senior job roles. So these are the things that I know of. And also one more is about innovation. I think there are innovation challenges in the organization being conducted for youngsters and also I think the oldest of generations, to bring out innovative ideas in the ways of working. And I think this keeps employees motivated and to feel part of the same family as everyone else. So
there's clearly something happening there, yes, which is not happening with the bulk of industries in India. I can see that from what the way the two of you have responded to the question. Now I come to a very global question. I ask this of all my guests. while we are doing our work, we also know about how much how many problems we have which are macro in nature, like the natural environment risk, or the problem of youth, the Gen Z being trained into good skills, for instance, or digitalization, or fair access to development, something which is again quite gender related, or even the role of stakeholders in actually determining the fortunes of the companies or wherever they work. Now, I want to ask both of you whether a project management perspective in handling these large and rather nebulous kind of problems that we have, because we don't know where to begin and where to end with these kind of problems. They're so humongous. So do you think, in your opinion, do you think a project management perspective would actually help in alleviating global problems, rather than just keep talking about them and doing less, and then creating a lot of strife in terms of disagreement and trying to getting nowhere actually with the whole argument? So I somehow feel that clear perspectives and the will to be action oriented, which are the hallmarks of project management, perhaps these should be used, but I don't know, and I want to ask both of you whether this could be a possibility. Can we begin with Irial again first?
Yeah. So I think I bring in my change management hat into this one, because I think some of these issues are to do with that there isn't a will to do it, and so therefore there isn't a way found. But I do like the kind of layering in the project management, because with any project, you start with what are we trying to achieve with this? What's the end goal? What does success look like? What are we trying to achieve with it? And I think if we were to take that question and use it as a way of getting people to look at the future of some of these and get them to explore what would this mean, or what would this look like, or why should we do this? I think a lot of times, humans are not necessarily, and we've touched on this throughout today's discussion, humans, there's a large percentage of the humans don't naturally tend towards the future. They don't tend to look out towards the end goal and what's coming down the line. I would say, I know that the Pareto rule would have a 20% would do it, but on my personal view is it's only about 10%. So a lot of times these things aren't done because they're not in people's immediate future. They're not immediately impacted by it. And so therefore they're not going to expend the energy. So I think that as part of that project scoping process that happens with project management, that kind of forcing that conversation to what this would mean and what it would look like and what the outcomes and what the changes would look like from it would be a very useful way to push the conversation. But I also think the other thing I think is very useful, if you're taking the project management approach, is also the really understanding the stakeholders and really understanding their drivers and the power and the influence and their interest in it. Because a lot of times these things don't happen because the stakeholders that have no interest in changing the status quo have an awful lot more power on the outcomes than the people who have an interest, the positive forces for it. So I think by understanding that and applying that lens to the different stakeholders, and how could we get those stakeholders that are happy with the status quo to start pushing them the dial, turning the dial towards, well, how can we still, how can those people still feel that they're not getting, their power isn't being eroded, if you like, or whatever, while we're also turning the dial and moving towards better outcomes, would be a very useful way, I think, of framing a lot of these discussions.
Right. So true. Yes, Lakshmi?
Yeah, I think that project management perspective and approach is more a facilitator in problem solving for these larger issues. But I think good project management alone is not going to solve the issues. So I think what is more important is to create incentives for more research and innovation programs, which can go a long way in finding solutions to solve these problems really. And I think for this, like what Irial said, that what is required is support and also firm commitments from stakeholders like policymakers, funding sources. So all of these play a pivotal role. And for sure, project management will can accelerate the implementation of these initiatives, but it's not like a problem solver, it's more a facilitator, as I would see.
Okay. Yes. I think these are very interesting perspectives, and I think a lot of development that has taken place in the world up until now, and really in the last few decades, is only because of a PM approach, using PM either as a facilitator or, as Irial says, in the center of things. You actually make people work around what can be the outcome and help them to think through or visualize. So with this I come to the last question, and again I want to I decided to have both of you powerful women this month, because as I say, it's not a day like an International Women's Day that we should celebrate, but also we should celebrate the times of women. Everywhere I see around me such wonderful women, such and I always wonder that what were we doing all these years? Why were we not being recognized as much as we are now? And I am pretty gender neutral, as I think both of you may be too. But still, there is something special that we bring to the table always. I notice that a lot. And, Imaginal began last year in March. And the 12th episode we are having now, it began with a lady, and the 12th episode again has two ladies being featured. So this was a part of a plan to have this whole month celebrated as not just celebrated for, but not a day, but just a whole month. And we are completing a whole 1 year of Imaginal. We took a break in between around New Year's and December and all. So we are celebrating 1 year of Imaginal, and which better way than to have both of you. So my last question is, where do you see the future of women in projects going forward? Lakshmi, we begin with you, because you belong to the new generation. You're going to be the future. And let us know, and the audience know, where do you see yourself?
Yes, I personally see a very great future for women in project management and also in other leadership roles. We already can see a lot of organizations taking initiatives to overcome this gender bias. We can see it all over social media, the way organizations promote themselves in this regard, and also the initiatives to achieve the gender equality and diversity, not just from gender point of view, but also from ethnicity and cultural and point of views. You can even see it in the job postings and ads these days on LinkedIn that they say that we are gender neutral, and so on and so forth. So I think especially in management roles, women do have a great future. So with the right blend of education and the skill sets and experience, women can definitely take up many opportunities that are available. And what would really help is the real motivation from successful women leaders like you and seniors who could motivate young women to take up more challenging roles. I think this will go a long way to support the future generations. And also good support from the family members, because one reality that really hits is the work-life balance, to how to manage your family and your work. So here comes, I think, the role of the family members as well. It's a very pivotal role. So from my personal experience, I do have two very young boys who are at the peak of their energy levels, who seek a lot of attention from me and my husband. So managing my personal needs demands from me a lot of skills in terms of, I think, what we can call agility, and to meet their requirements in addition to my job requirements. And for this, I have an equally supporting partner who is on a more equally or a more challenging job that I am, and what is more important, that even at the home front that we have a right balance
Right.
between, and living in a country like Sweden, I think it's
So true.
there's a lot of importance given to this gender equality and sharing responsibility equally between partners, and this is a common way of life. It's nothing special. So I think family also plays a very big role in supporting women to take up roles with higher responsibilities. But definitely there's a very bright future for women.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So, Irial?
Well, yeah, I don't think women are going away from the workplace, that's for sure. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in terms of, that there is a perennial work-life balance, and Sweden is particularly good in supporting females in terms of providing early education, early childhood places as well. In terms of there's a lot of countries around the world that it isn't as easy, and it's very expensive, or it's quite difficult to get that sort of level of support. So I suppose there's ongoing challenges there that I think have to be addressed within society as a whole. But I don't see them going away anywhere. And I do see, I think, as more change management is it becomes more and more important for particularly the sort of the non-technical, if you're building a road, people will use the road, but if you're building new technology, people won't necessarily use the technology. So different projects require different, different change elements to it. And I see that becoming a bigger and bigger expectation of project managers as a whole.
Yes.
And I do think it's something that females can really embrace and step into, and be, I suppose, increase their value to projects, because if you can combine the project management and the change management into one role, it makes it, that's very desirable for organizations.
That's so true. Yes. In fact, just taking a little leaf out of what Lakshmi said, she's so lucky to be in those Scandinavian countries where everything has been put into the public domain in terms of their economists have actually calculated the kind of work women do. And that is once you calculate and you actually say that women work worth so much at home as raising children or keeping house, as well as working outside and being productive in the economic system, it kind of throws light or sheds light on a woman's contribution and brings it to another level where the partner also has to actually pitch in and do his or her bit. So it's a more equal world when you actually put a value to what the woman does in terms of a monetary value. And yes, women are not going anywhere. I agree with this. It's a wrap up. Before I wrap up, I will just quickly sum up what both of you have said. It began with you, Irial, and you said, and I was very pleasantly surprised to hear you liked history and how you use it in your today's work, where you actually use it for context structuring. So history is powerful in setting context and understanding where things come from. How wonderfully put. I'm a student of history myself, and I really pursue that interest to this day. Despite everybody around me laughing at about it and saying that history is just chronology and stuff like that, and it's how so boring kind of a thing. But thank you for that. Lakshmi, of course, your teachers, your parents, they have been so involved, and that has groomed you. So encouragement and confidence and imbibing the right values has come from there for you. Irial, in the initial stages, you admitted you've meandered through your career, through starting with STEM, your interest and your application of math and stats to the actuarial practice, which I know is completely driven. And it is actually the heart of any insurance and reinsurance or any of the financial services companies. So when that was taken away, when the heart was taken away, you had to look at fresh opportunities. And thank God for that, because you are doing so much good work in PM now. Lakshmi, your initial job, you said, was related to your contracts management, which you studied in your postgraduate level, and you were able to apply a lot of what you learned there, as also your engineering. And you said that when I asked you about what special traits that women carry into the workplace, with unlike their male counterparts, I think you said it was communication, compassionate because of a higher EQ, conflict handling, detail-oriented skills, etc. So, which produces better quality of work. And Irial, you said that we are naturally people-focused. We are empathetic, we are agreeable and collaborative. Of course, Lakshmi, you said that technical issues, when I asked you whether a non-technical person can survive in an engineering kind of setup with his or her PM skills, you said that some knowledge of the technical is essential, and there should be a right degree of or mix of understanding the technical as well as the non-technical stuff, which is human related. And Irial, of course, says that, and I really like that very focused point, which you said, that the ability to visualize the future and and also the dependencies that come in every project, and which can be these interdependencies are important to understand, because somewhere you can get a clogged situation because you have not thought through where where the problem could arise. So that helps us in anticipating, and that does not require a technical orientation. So that was a very good facet that you have brought out. Thank you for that. And of course, the trust and coaching approach, the leadership approach that the non-technical domain, it comes from the non-technical domain. Towards the end, of course, you all have both said that women are important in projects, that the larger problems can be solved with a PM approach, because it makes us think outcomes, it makes us think what all the stakeholders need, and we can use PM either as a facilitator, or you can have a whole PM-driven approach in solving problems. So with that, thank you, Irial and Lakshmi, for all your candid responses. Irial, especially you have been indisposed for the past few days, but you still made it a point to come today. A special thank you to you for that. I would now, of course, we could take a few audience questions or comments. And Nidhi, could you please help us with that? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Irial. Thank you, Lakshmi. It was indeed a very interesting and wonderful session. Yes, we have received a few questions, and considering the time in hand that we are at present, I'll pick a few. This question is from Sandeep, and he's asking, I have a question for Lakshmi. Have you found any differences in the way projects are handled in India and are being handled in Sweden?
Yes. When I was in project management in India, I was in a different industry. I was more in the construction sector, in construction-related projects, as compared to what I am in Sweden. And that also makes a difference. It's not just about the country. So construction, I was a lot on site in India, and for a woman, it was a challenge. I would say even from basic facilities like washrooms wouldn't be there on a construction site. And it's a very male-dominated industry, the construction industry. And when I sit there as a project lead, or at that time I was an assistant project manager, when I would sit there at site and try to get work done or ask people for updates, people would look at me like, who are you? Why are you asking us, And at the same time, I would see my male counterparts talking very aggressively at site, to get job done. And that was not my way of working. So there was a lot of practical difficulties when I worked in India. And then when I moved to Sweden, I wasn't... There's more a challenge about language here, like to be in localized industries, to work in projects in the construction sector and be with the locals. There is more a requirement to know the local language. I was more into power projects, like which were building power plants, but far away in the north of America. But I was sitting in Sweden and doing the project management based out of office. So it made a lot of difference for me. It was much easier for me, except for the fact that everything was long distance, but technology helped, of course, to work closely. The other difference between India and Sweden, I would say in India, we try to get everything perfect. There is less room to work out of the box. People don't like it when you do things a little differently, but I think here the mindset is more open. And it is not that there can be a lot of non-STEM people here doing project managerial roles, which initially was difficult for me to accept. Okay, how come he is leading a team of project managers, but he's not even from a background related to engineering or project management? But then with time, I got accustomed to this, and I really understood that it's not just about technical knowledge, but it's also about the value and experience that you have, and also your personal capabilities to a large extent. So I hope I answered your question.
Great. So, Lakshmi, do you feel that there is a different way of handling gender in India and in Sweden? You feel that
definitely there is a difference, but I think things are improving a lot because in India as well, because I see a lot of my classmates and my ex-colleagues doing very well and in very senior positions. And sometimes I think I have stuck to project management, but look at them, they're like directors and they are heading business units. So I don't see, I wouldn't say that India is very far away. But from the mindset point of view, yes, that I think there is a lot of generation gaps in India with sometimes with traditional mindsets and difficulties to accept women paying more attention to their professional life than personal life.
True. Thank you so much. I have a question for Irial. I want to know, will you be writing something or authoring a book that talks about various cultures of project management across the globe?
Yeah, thanks for that question. This might be one that Mona and myself will collaborate on. No, my next book, actually, I am going to talk I'm going to focus in on feedback, giving effective feedback, which is quite interesting because obviously it works very differently in different cultures. But I don't know if you've come across the book by Erin Mayer, The Culture Map, and that's an excellent book in terms of understanding different cultures, not specifically to project management, but different cultures in general, and so how they approach things. So, for the likes of Sweden is extremely egalitarian, so that there's an equality between the genders in a way that other cultures don't have. So it kind of brings to life. It's an excellent book if you're working cross-culturally to understand where different cultures are coming from and how different cultures might be close on. She looks at about 8 different spectra, and so you can kind of see how you might be your culture that you grew up in might be close to another culture on some of the spectra and very, very different on other ones. So it's really, really interesting from that perspective.
Great. Good to know. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the audience for their very motivating compliments. That certainly pushes us to keep it going. With this, guests and our audience, we have come to the end of this episode. All those viewers who would like a certificate of attendance may please leave your email addresses in the chat box. For all those who have missed the session today, the talk will be available on VSAR Imaginal Talk series on Learning and Skill Development YouTube next week. Please like, follow, and subscribe to the Imaginal Talks on YouTube and Imaginal blogs on YT Systems website. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today and engaging with us with your comments and questions. Bye for now, and stay with Imaginal on YouTube for this and for all our previous episodes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nidhi.
It's a very interesting talk. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.